Hello, church family, and today we're going to be in Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 through 16. And in our text today, we see that Moses and the Hebrew people are going to battle. And Moses comes up with an interesting strategy. First, he elects Joshua to lead these warriors against the Leman. Good choice. Joshua seems to be courageous, bold, and a great leader. And so he puts Joshua over the warriors. He's to lead the charge. But then Moses comes up with an interesting tactic for himself. Moses says he's going to go to a hill and hold up the staff of God. It's very interesting, but if you've been following along and reading up to this point, this staff that Moses has been part of for quite a few things. And so if I had a staff like this, I'd be trying to figure out some way to use it in this battle, some way to make it a part of the battle. And so Moses comes up with this idea. This very staff was with Moses when he met the Lord and the Lord turned it into a serpent. He had the staff with him when he faced Pharaoh. It was used in some of the plagues. He had the staff with him when God parted the sea and the Israelites crossed on dry land and God destroyed the pursuers of Israel. And Moses also had the staff with him when he smacked the rock and water poured out of it. So this staff has been a part of a lot of things that Moses has been a part of. These miracles and these wonders that God has been working out for his people here. So Moses is going to use this staff in some way, and rightfully so. But most importantly, this is just a staff. What Moses understands, what Moses knows is important. He knows where the source of their strength comes from at this point. He's learned that lesson. He's learned the lesson that the source of their strength comes from the Lord and the Lord alone. In verse 10 it says this, "So Joshua did as Moses told him," which was to lead these warriors, "and fought with Leman. While Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill, whenever Moses held his hands up, Israel prevailed. And whenever he lowered his hands, Leman prevailed." So this strategy, this tactic, it worked. Moses' plan worked. As long as Moses' hands were up, Israel would prevail. But brings up an interesting situation. As the battle wages and the war lasts for a while, Moses' hands grow tired. And that seemed to be the weakness there. Moses' hands grew weary, the Bible says, and his hands would fall. And Moses grew tired. So the people that Moses brought with him, Aaron and Hur, they come up with this idea. And so in verse 12 it says, "But Moses' hands grew weary. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And while Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, so his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua overwhelmed Elimelech and his people with the sword." So we see that Aaron and Hur, they see the source of their power. They see by Moses' examples, if I keep my hands up, the Lord will have a victory today. Israel will have a victory today. And they see that as their friend, as their leader grows weary, they've got to come up with an idea. They've got to come up with a plan. And the plan is to get back to the source. What can we do to get our leader back to the source? We need the source, and that's what Aaron and Hur see. And so they move the stone for Moses to sit on, and Aaron on one side and Hur on the other, and they hold Moses' hands up until the Israelites prevail, till Joshua and these warriors of the Israelites, they prevail over Leman. When I was reading through this passage, I was like, okay, how does that apply? And the application, the idea that just kept sitting in was prayer and the importance of prayer. I know that's something that's said a lot, but just like Moses here, Moses understood where the source of his strength came from, where the source of Israelites' victory would come from, and that's from the Lord. And that's still true today. God hasn't changed that plan or that method. And we have the ability, knowing Christ and what Christ has done for us, to go to the source of our strength, our provider, who is God, our Father in heaven. And we have access to that through Jesus to be able to tap into that source. And I think the Bible's clear on how to do that on a daily basis. And that is through prayer. The interns and I, some of the student summer interns that work with me, were walking through this book called Growing Up. It's by this author, Robert Gallaty. And he points out something very interesting in Luke chapter 11, which is the Lord's Prayer, and Jesus teaching the disciples the Lord's Prayer. And it starts off with the disciples making this request. And this is what he says. He says, notice these guys, the disciples, didn't inquire about systematic theology, church growth and leadership, healing, preaching, or walking on water. The disciples learned that prayer was the source of all things. Through Jesus' example and how he lived on earth, we know that he prayed like crazy. He prayed all the time. He knew where the source, the power was coming from. And Moses, in this victory, examples this as well. He goes to the Lord. He inquires with the Lord. He wants the power to come from, the victory to come from the Lord. And he's going to hold his hands up. But lastly, closing, and what I find so interesting, do you have an Aaron and Hur? I think that's another important lesson to learn here. When you can't mentally or physically do it anymore, is there someone in your life that jumps in and holds the rope? Is there someone in your life that comes beside you and holds you up in prayer, taking you back to the source? I'm telling you, if you have these people in your life, you need to keep them near to you. If you don't have these people in your life, I think the practical instruction is to start being that for somebody else and ask the Lord to give you those people. Aaron and Hur here are so interesting that they would see their leader's need and their need for them to be tapped into the source of God, the power, the source that is going to provide them victory. Hopefully that's an encouragement today. Pray. That is our source of strength. And then also get those people around you that will hold you up and will hold the rope when you can't physically do it yourself anymore. When you've met a limitation, when you've gotten to the end, hopefully you have those people around you and pray for those people around you. Be that for somebody else as well. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in. We love you and we'll see you soon. All right, bye.